Let's bring in former CNN White House correspondent and director at the School of Media and Public Affairs at George Washington University, Mr. Frank Sesno. CNN family, great to have you here. Let's play the original piece of sound that got O'Reilly in trouble, and then we will play the piece of sound from a former CBS colleague that supposedly tells the truth of the context of the situation. First, O'Reilly, let's go.
I was in a situation one time in a war zone in Argentina in the Falklands where my photographer got run down and hit his head and was bleeding from the ear on the concrete, and the army was chasing us.
He's trying to build it up into a more frightening and deadly situation than it was. It wasn't a combat situation by any sense of the word that I know. There were no people killed. He said that he saw troops fire into the crowd. I never saw that, and I don't know anybody who did.
All right, Frank Sesno, you are known for your fairness. You are known for how you do your job as a journalist. But today, you present the perspective of what is wrong with this, and I will push back from the perspective of what O'Reilly's defense is of it. Please begin. What is wrong here?
Well, first of all, what is wrong here is that we're in a season where we're taking a look at what people have said, thanks to Brian Williams, and a hard look at what Mr. O'Reilly said raises questions about whether he's embellished. The words "in the Falklands" may have been passing words on his part, but they were not where he or Engberg or I, because I covered that conflict as well, ever were. We were in Buenos Aires. Now, Bill now says, well, that's where I was all along, but his words, were they embellishments, indicated perhaps otherwise. He also talked about, in another clip that Brian Stelter ran yesterday on Reliable Sources, talked about troops firing into the crowds and people dropping, and as we heard there just a moment ago, and as I can tell you, there were no stories of sort of massacres in the streets of Buenos Aires. That was a difficult area and sometimes tense, but BA was not a war zone itself.
O'Reilly says protests are very dynamic things. What I see where I am may not be what you see where you are. And these other guys from CBS didn't see it because they didn't leave. Only I did. And I saw what I saw, and my cameraman was hurt, and it was combat by any other name because you had opposing forces trying to kill one another.
Well, what we also have going on here, Chris, which is really interesting, and this has not happened with the Brian Williams case, is we have an on-the-record food fight. Where you have varying points of view from within the CBS family. And what Enberg told Brian yesterday was, I was there. I was on the streets. I didn't see any of this. When O'Reilly came back, O'Reilly didn't want to share his tape, and he got slapped by the producer, the CBS producer at the time. So there's a lot of stuff here that actually now can be tracked down. I would tell you that the bottom line for this, as far as the audience should be concerned, and as far as the industry should be concerned, is what actually happened. And it's not that hard to really pin it down. And will people be held accountable to their words?
Well, now, you say varying accounts. From CBS's side, I haven't heard anything that agrees with O'Reilly yet, coming out from Schieffer or Zarinsky or Mr. Engberg, or they had a couple others, I believe, that are being sourced now. We didn't have them, but I hear they're being sourced. And in terms of accountability, that comes down to where he works, Frank, right? I mean, that comes back down to whether Fox wants to feel that this is something legitimate enough to take action. But given what Fox cultivates as its audience, why should it care what people like you, me, or anybody else thinks from the mainstream media?
Well, they probably don't, but I think they care what their audience thinks, and that's what really should matter here, not what others necessarily in the media think. And if part of Bill O'Reilly's platform is built on his credibility, I mean, he's a self-acknowledged bloviator, and he's got some sense of humor about it, and that's fine. But when it comes to embellishing your own story or embellishing the truth, if that's what is happening here, it certainly seems to be, and if the audience, his own audience, becomes upset by it, then Fox has an issue. I don't think they're going to care very much what you and I think about this. We represent the mainstream media, which is what they and their base, Fox's base, feels is so much part of the problem.
Right.
But Chris, credibility matters. If you embellish a resume and you're applying for a job, you're not going to get the job. If you plagiarize, and that's a word that Bill O'Reilly has used with respect to who used his tapes, be careful how that word gets thrown around, but if you do that, there are consequences. There are consequences and should be consequences for our words. That's why the media writ large is in so much trouble with the public, where they feel that the media are not transparent enough, not accountable enough, and get away with kind of making it up, winging it. In some ways, that's what's at stake here, I think.
Well, they're seeing a big culture test for the media by the media right now. And Frank Sesno, you're an example of how it's done right. So thank you for weighing in on this today.